Williams was a fashion icon that was appointed by Louis Vuitton to become their creative director, or the extremely wealthy businessman who's had tons of massive deals, or an award-winning musician and artist. Pharrell was half of the production duo The Neptunes, with his buddy Chad Hugo from their hometown of Virginia Beach, Virginia. While entering a local talent contest in 1992 as The Neptunes, Pharrell and Chad were discovered by New York City producer Teddy Riley, who had relocated to Virginia and had his studio situated near Pharrell's high school. With Teddy Riley taking the duo under his wing, the Neptunes wrote the 1992 mega hit Rump Shaker for Rex and Effects while they were still high school students. They also worked with Teddy Riley's group Blackstreet to co-write the single Tonight's the Night. By the time Pharrell and Chad Hugo started their own label, Star Trek Entertainment, with their business partner Rob Walker, the year was 2001. As the Neptunes, they were in high demand as the producers that were changing the sound of the radio, making hits for Jay-Z like I Just Wanna Love You, Beanie Man's Girls Dem Sugar, Britney Spears' I'm a Slave for You, and Jadakiss Knock Yourself Out, with their exciting new style. In fact, by 2003, the Neptunes were said to be responsible for 43% of the songs on the radio in the US. The formula tended to be customizing their simple, futuristic sonics to rappers and singers, across genres, with Pharrell not shy about providing additional vocals and Chad Hugo more comfortable staying behind the scenes. Playing off of a love for the classic science fiction franchise Star Trek, the Star Trek record label had major label backing from Interscope, as a world-famous production unit that constructed club bangers and radio songs for Beyoncé, Nori, Justin Timberlake, T.I., Nelly, Ludacris, Robin Thicke, Gwen Stefani, and Snoop Dogg, just to name a few. The Neptunes continued to explode in the 2000s, getting called the #1 producers of the decade by Billboard in 2009. Considering that by January 2020, the Neptunes were announced to be inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame as part of the 2020 class, how did their record label Star Trek rise in 2001 with their Virginia Beach friends, the Clipse, the duo of brothers Malice and Pusha T, to the entire company being defunct in 2014? Star Trek Entertainment first landed in front of audiences with NERD, No One Ever Really Dies, the hip-hop/rock band that was formed by Pharrell, Chad Hugo, and their friend Shay Haley. Not only did their kind of rock songs produce a gold album, In Search Of, in 2001, but it was also the first step in separating what Pharrell and Chad did as hitmakers, the Neptunes. It opened up their lane wider than rap and R&B, getting their fans ready for the wild genre-merging ride that they were going to take them on. Star Trek was ready to bring in rock musicians and pop singers to join the roster with lyrically advanced rappers from the streets like the Clipse and alternative soul songs sung by Khalees. NERD became the major label version of a garage band of high school friends making fun, authentic songs. It wasn't forced down audiences' ears, you were either a fan or you weren't. The first 4 NERD albums were released under the Star Trek imprint, but they only happened ever so often. Their second gold album, Fly or Die, almost 3 years later in 2004, then there was Seeing Sound in 2008, and Nothing in 2010. Their genre-bending sound wasn't for everybody, but it was bold enough to build up a niche cult fan base following beyond the Neptunes and bring Star Trek 2 of their first 5 gold album plaques. How many duos are there in hip-hop that are not equally great in holding their own weight on the mic, but also brothers? There really isn't, other than Pusha T and Malice, also now known as No Malice of the Clipse. Growing up in Virginia Beach, they grew up working on music with Pharrell and Chad and became Star Trek's flagship group, capturing the streets more than anyone else on the label at the time. Clipse was like yin and yang. No Malice, or Malice at the time, was the wise older brother with strong religious references that can be found in their album titles that are often derived from biblical scriptures like Lord Willin', Hell Hath No Fury, Until the Casket Drops. There was even supposedly going to be another Clipse album called As God Is My Witness. Pusha T, on the other hand, was like the wild younger brother without discipline or restraint, who seemed more attracted to material wealth than seeking forgiveness for his sins. All 3 of the Clipse' Star Trek albums each had a different major label distributor, showing the level of label politics that was interfering with their ability to release material on a regular basis. Their first album, Lord Willin', was distributed by Arista and was the only project to clear enough sales to earn a gold certification. Their classic anthem, Grindin', tapped into their first-hand experiences as part of a crew allegedly tied to drug dealing. It would be the real-life fears of federal arrest that would later break up the crew and reduce the duo Clipse into solo careers for the 2 brothers. After the Clipse' first Star Trek release, which was entirely produced by the Neptunes, ended its run, It would take 4 more years before their new offering, Hell Hath No Fury, this time with Jive handling distribution, a business relationship that the Clips would grow to hate. This is because Arista Records artists in the urban department were transferred to its sister label Jive as part of a merger between Sony Music Entertainment and BMG. Clips was contractually forced to stay with Jive while the rest of Star Trak's roster moved to Interscope. Pusha T and Malice felt that Jive was more focused on their pop music acts and kept overlooking the Clips and delaying the release of Hell Hath No Fury. The Clips got fed up enough to ask to be released from Jive, and when that didn't happen, they sued the label. By the time they dropped their last Clips album, with Star Trak Columbia, they had broken up. Not because the brothers had beef with each other, it was because the coke dealer lifestyle that they constantly rapped about was catching up to them. Malice was so overwhelmed by the pressure coming from a federal investigation of his friends that he stepped away from it all and put both feet all the way in the church. Malice explained the moment that made him leave the music industry and the street ties that he felt would either have him in prison or dead. That story, it runs deep. They were picking up all of our friends at different times. I had a friend, he just had a baby. He's wheelchairing his wife, who's holding the baby while coming out of the hospital, and bam, they got him. I have another friend, he's driving on the interstate with his girl and his daughter in the car, and the police come crash their car into his to make him pull over. They were coming for everybody. There was a whole bunch of stuff happening. We didn't know who was going to get picked up next. They were kicking in doors, making mamas and wives get on the floor. It was just crazy. When I was on the plane and I didn't see my brother get on the plane, I knew what was up because we never missed flights. We were never late. We're usually calling each other and double checking and all that. I hadn't heard none of that. I'm sitting on the plane and at the very last minute he comes stumbling in the door. I stood up in the middle of the aisle in front of all those people on the plane and I told him, "Yo, I don't know if you thought I was joking. I don't know if you thought I was playing. I'm letting you know I ain't doing this no more." Eventually, the federal investigation gave the Clips manager Anthony Gonzalez a prison sentence of 32 years in 2010 after admitting he was the head of a $20 million drug ring on drug trafficking charges, but he ended up getting out a bit earlier. The alternative soul singer Kelis met the Neptunes through a mutual friend at Performing Arts School when she was only 19. And by year 20, she had her debut album Kaleidoscope, totally produced by them, with the follow-up Wonderland. Kelis' third album, Tasty, ironically became the first project from the singer that was on the Star Trak Entertainment label, and also the first project that wasn't completely produced by her label bosses, the Neptunes. A situation that she has since said made them unhappy. It would also be the only album Kelis would have on Star Trak, even with her numerous appearances for songs by NERD and the Clips. Maybe part of Kelis' resistance to having the Neptunes handle the whole Tasty album is that she has publicly accused them of taking all her publishing income via contract that they had her sign, and her not seeing any royalty revenue from her first 2 albums, Kaleidoscope and Wonderland. Kelis stated, "I thought it was a beautiful and pure, creating safe space, but it ended up not being that at all. I was told we were going to split the whole thing 33, 33, 33, which we didn't do. Blatantly lied to and tricked. The Neptunes and their management and their lawyers and all that stuff, and just the fact that I wasn't poor felt like enough. Their argument is, well, you signed it." And I'm like, yeah, I signed what I was told. And I was too young and too stupid to double check it. Unfortunately, another female artist from Harlem that was also signed to Star Trak early in her career also felt let down by them, the rapper-singer Teyana Taylor. Teyana signed to Star Trak as a teenager and parted ways with the label in 2012, with no album released, heading over to Kanye West's Good Music instead. Although Teyana Taylor has since cleared the air with Pharrell Williams and expressed that there are no hard feelings held on her end, Teyana still felt disappointed by her experience with Pharrell during her Star Trak days, stating, "I had a really deep and honest conversation with Pharrell because, he was the first person to sign me. He was Skateboard P. I was Skateboard T. You cannot tell me that wasn't my pops. I really looked up to him. He didn't have kids at the time and he wanted kids. He'd be like, yo, she called me her pops. He was really proud of that. For me, I was like his baby twin. He's not confrontational at all. He's literally one of the sweetest people in just the whole wide world. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't that he didn't protect me, it's just that a lot of hands started going into the cookie jar. It's P, he not about to be like, no, y'all back up. Maybe he was hurt about some things. You don't know, it could have been a thing of pride and ego at the time. We don't know. To me, as a 15-year-old, it was, you didn't protect me. You let everyone mishandle me, I signed to you. You let everybody get in the way, and everybody break us apart. You didn't protect me. In mid-2004, Star Trak signed rap legend Snoop Dogg's company Doggy Style Records to a distribution deal and released Snoop Dogg's album R&G Rhythm and Gangsta, the masterpiece, which was led by Drop It Like It's Hot, which would be yet another hit single for the label. This album would go platinum in the US and put Star Trak in such a surplus that they were able to add another seasoned rapper to their roster, Slim Thug. Coming out of Virginia, it was time for Star Trak to tap into the South, especially with talent from Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee exploding. Slim Thug proved to be the right fit, a Houston rapper who had already proved the star power, having released many mixtapes and collaborative albums with his Boss Hogg Outlawz crew. Signing Slim Thug for his debut album, already platinum, proved to be a gamble worth betting on. With gold selling results in 2005, the same year Slim Thug was featured on Beyoncé's album for her platinum song, Check On It. The Slim Thug relationship with Star Trak only ended up being a one-and-done situation, same as with Snoop Dogg, but these successful projects still really strengthened their catalog. In July of 2006, Pharrell took a huge step away from the familiar comfort of the Neptunes' established brand. This marked the moment that he ventured out on his own with his debut solo album, In My Mind. Not only did Pharrell stand out in front of the microphone as a vocalist without Chad Hugo and Shay Haley of NERD backing him up, but he also produced the entire In My Mind album by himself. Without Chad Hugo as a creative safety net, his first time tackling a full project totally on his own. Unfortunately, the practically guaranteed success that his Star Trak audio universe had been getting up until this point now showed signs of wear and tear with Pharrell's solo project. How did the captain of the Star Trak enterprise fail to go platinum or even gold after giving his audience years of getting used to his catchy songs on the choruses of his clients? First of all, none of his 4 singles became hits. To make matters worse, 3 of those 4 singles had A-list features and still didn't strike the jackpot. Can I Have It Like That had Gwen Stefani. Number 1 featured Kanye West, and Snoop Dogg hopped on That Girl. There's even a slightly odd song called Young Girl featuring Jay-Z where Jay raps about loving a 19-year-old, which in a post-Me Too movement world didn't really age that well and definitely wouldn't have made it out of the studio today. On top of the lagging sales, the critical reviews were pretty much mid to low, with E! Weekly giving it a C, a 2.5 from Rolling Stone, and a staggeringly low 3.9 out of 10 from Pitchfork. No matter how confident Pharrell may or may not have been back then in 2006, after the reaction to In My Mind, the fact of the matter was that Pharrell Williams wouldn't release another solo album again for 8 years, which was his much improved gold-selling album Girl, with the lead-off single being his global smash hit Happy, a song that moved over 11 million units in the US alone. There were also 5 Star Trak signings that were more reflective of Pharrell's and Chad's eclectic taste in music and less commercially obvious. First off, there was Spy Mob, a 4-piece alternative pop rock band from Minneapolis. Sky Mob were the live musicians that provided backing instrumentals for the 2002 debut album of Pharrell and Chad's band NERD. Aside from appearing on the 2003 compilation album by the Neptunes called Clones, Sky Mob only had one album pushed out by Star Trak that same year, and that was Sitting Around Keeping Score. Without making noise, this would complete their time on the label, with their next 2 projects released independently. Sky Mob still managed to be a backing band in 2008 for NERD's 3rd studio album, Seeing Sounds. The second minor Star Trak addition was the High Speed Scene, a band who, like Sky Mob, had a sound that had nothing to do with the chart-topping R&B and hip-hop that the Neptunes were known for. The High Speed Scene put out one album on Star Trak that was more in line with the punk rock music edges that filtered into Pharrell's and Chad's band, being described as a subgenre known as, quote, power pop, a mixture of kind of cheerful rock and pop music, similar to the Beach Boys. The High Speed Scene put out their self-titled debut album with Star Trak in March of 2005. Aside from 2 of their songs getting video game placements, the IROC Z was featured in MVP Baseball 2005, and All About It was placed in the MLB 2006, there wasn't much hype around this album. The third lesser-known artist signed to Star Trak was Ken, an Ethiopian-American singer-songwriter in the indie rock meets kind of electronica vein. Ken actually grew up with Pharrell Williams and Chad Hugo in Virginia Beach and dropped both a 3-song project for promotional use called The Black Goodbye EP in 2007 and then a full-length album titled Make Sure They See My Face in the same year. The single Say Goodbye to Love gained a Grammy nomination. The album even had a feature from Justin Timberlake, but after putting out one low-selling album, Ken faded away from Star Trak and went on to keep working with Chad Hugo outside the label. The fourth, more obscure signing on the Neptune Star Trak label is the Teriyaki Boys, a Japanese hip-hop group from Tokyo. The 5-member squad consisted of artists from different groups, including Omari and Rao Z from Rip Slime, Verbal from M-Flow, rapper Wise, and Teriyaki Boys DJ, who also happened to be the famed fashion brand owner, Nigo, of Bape. Their only Star Trek album, Serious Japanese, had some serious American stars. There was production from the Neptunes themselves, Kanye West, Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys, Jermaine Dupri, Mark Ronson, Super Dave West, and Japanese producers Toate from D-Light and Cornelius. But even with all of these A-list features from Pharrell, Ye, Busta Rhymes, Big Sean, Pusha T, Chris Brown, and Ad Rock, the Teriyaki Boys album only made most of its noise in Japan. Number 5 out of Star Trek's lesser-known artists with albums on the label is Chester French, two indie pop musicians that met each other while they were Ivy League students at Harvard in the dining hall when they were freshmen. The group consists of David Andrew Wallach, D.A., and multi-instrumentalist and songwriter Maxwell Drummy, who cut demo songs on campus in their dorm's basement studio. Chester French signed with Star Trek after turning down offers from Def Jam, Good Music, and So So Def, and put out their debut album Love the Future in April of 2009. What was it like meeting Pharrell for the first time? D.A. Wallach described it by saying, "The first time we met Pharrell was in New York in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel, and it was surreal. I'm such a fan and always have been. Our meeting was just a sit-down. We were in the lobby of this hotel, and Pharrell had Star Trek at the time. And so the premise of the meeting was pretty clear. He wanted to meet us to see if we were worthy of a record deal or something. It was a really cool meeting. One thing that stands out pretty strongly is that Pharrell has an incredible memory, and what he had ultimately got from us at the time was a CD, a burned CD with about 15 to 18 songs on it. It was like a substantial number of songs, and when we sat down with him, he was like, oh, track 3, 7, and 14 were my favorites. And on track 14 at the second half of the bridge was amazing. He had these savant-like details that he could pull out from only having listened to the CD like once or twice. And it was sort of just like, wow, this guy's a genius." Even though Chester French's album Love the Future didn't blow up big with any gold or platinum certifications, the duo's brand managed to tap into this hipster era of the late 2000s and early 2010s, helping them be liked by industry tastemakers. Their performance opportunities were wide open, touring with everybody from Lady Gaga and Pharrell to Blink-182 and Weezer. But after their debut album, their subsequent projects were released directly through Interscope, and then independently until D.A. Wallach went to work for Spotify, and Maxwell Drummy worked as an in-demand musician for artists such as Lauryn Hill. With none of the 5 Star Trek Entertainment signings of Sky Mob, The High Speed Scene, Kenna, Teriyaki Boys, and Chester French panning out as really strong, profitable, or hits, they may have taken away from the company's financial bottom line, but taking a chance at such a wide array of styles and genres did prove to the world that this was an unpredictable record label that truly represented the mission and taste of the Neptunes to bring all cultural backgrounds together. Robin Thicke, the son of actor Alan Thicke from the television series Growing Pains, was signed to Star Trek in 2005 after Pharrell expressed to Jimmy Iovine that he was interested in his talent. Pharrell's assumption would prove to be right, with Robin Thicke's first album going platinum and releasing 6 more through Star Trek, most of which were gold, making Robin Thicke the most successful signee to the label and the only real artist other than NERD to release albums on Star Trek after the Clipses left after their 2009 album. But in 2013, the Robin Thicke song Blurred Lines would prove to be the demise of his creative partnership with Star Trek. This massive diamond certified hit, Blurred Lines, would become the biggest of Robin Thicke's career. However, it would also be the last release on Star Trek Entertainment. With a great extended court case that grabbed the music industry's undivided attention, Pharrell finally decided to dissolve Star Trek Entertainment in 2014, in the midst of Blurred Lines producer Pharrell Williams and singer Robin Thicke getting sued by the family of Motown legend Marvin Gaye over a dispute of perceived copyright infringement due to what was thought to be similarities between Blurred Lines and Marvin Gaye's 1977 hit Gotta Give It Up. The legal battle lasted 5 years and sent fear throughout the music industry because the case seemed to be setting a dangerous precedent that artists could be sued for being inspired by the feeling of a song without stealing from it directly. Marvin Gaye's family was ultimately awarded a final judgment of close to $5 million against the primary writers of Blurred Lines, Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams. Robin Thicke, Pharrell, and Pharrell Williams' publishing company were required to pay the estate damages of nearly $2.9 million. Robin Thicke was also ordered to pay more than $1.7 million, and Pharrell and his publishing company had to pay $357,000 in separate awards to Marvin Gaye's estates, and Gaye's family would also receive pre-judgment interest on the damages and 50% of the royalties from Blurred Lines as well. However, Pharrell was doing a lot beyond the music. In 2003, Pharrell had teamed up with the Japanese fashion designer Nigo, who is the founder of the lucrative Bape clothing brand, which launched Billionaire Boys Club, which fused streetwear, high fashion, and hip hop. Ice Cream was then added as a subsidiary fashion label founded by Pharrell, with a price point more affordable than BBC. As Star Trek Entertainment faded away in 2014, Pharrell founded the multimedia creative collective I Am Other with Sony Music, later partnered up with YouTube to launch the I Am Other channel as part of YouTube's $100 million plan to push original content. Pharrell also launched a podcast called Othertone, dedicated to culture and art conversations with co-host Scott Vinner and Fam Lay. The podcast has also hosted events and live recordings. Othertone entered into a deal with Apple Radio to launch Othertone Radio on Apple Music One, which used to be called Beats One, along with a long list of film, television, fashion, literary, business, and art projects. The likelihood of Pharrell making time in his extremely busy schedule at this point to restart Star Trek Entertainment became even less likely when he became a father to his son in 2008, married his wife, fashion designer Helen, in 2013, and expanded their family with the birth of triplets in 2017. There was also no stopping the creative opportunities that Pharrell went into outside of the music industry, such as his 2017 sneaker collaboration with Chanel and Adidas, designing footwear that cost 10,000 euros. Then in 2019, the communication company Verizon partnered with Pharrell to launch a tech-inspired music curriculum for their Verizon Foundation learning schools, working to offer free internet access as well as technology solutions and curriculum to underserved middle schools. But on Valentine's Day of 2023, Louis Vuitton made it known to the world that Pharrell was appointed as the luxury fashion house's new men's creative director, filling in the position that became vacant after the death of Virgil Abloh in 2021. Pharrell's Louis Vuitton clothing collection is set to be displayed during Paris Men's Fashion Week in 2023. Pharrell's collection was set to be displayed during the Paris Men's Fashion Week in June of 2023, and when it was all said and done, the rise of Star Trek Entertainment marks a memorable moment in the 2000s and early 2010s that provided a colorful and very inclusive alternative to Jay-Z's Rockefeller, Eminem's Shady Records, Cameron's Dipset, 50 Cent's G-Unit, and even Birdman's Cash Money, and even Young Money after that paved the way for Drake and Nicki. The sound was just far different from all of these while still fitting into it. The decline of Star Trek was probably inevitable when you consider just how different Pharrell and Chad's lifestyles and priorities were, as well as how long the label had lasted up until that point. Pharrell was clearly the more ambitious star who was never going to be content just making music and running a label. Chad Hugo likely wasn't comfortable with the spotlight of fame and found satisfaction in staying connected to the music, raising family, and making the music out of inspiration instead of pressure to pull in platinum plaques. The legacy of Star Trek Entertainment is that it celebrated anyone considered a weirdo or not fitting in with the quote, cool style of music. After all, Pharrell's influence even spread to Tyler the Creator, who Tyler said his album and NERD are one of his biggest influences for Odd Future. The Neptunes brought together fashion kids, skateboarders, sneakerheads, college kids, rap fans, flashy club goers, everything, all under one roof at Star Trek, and they had one hell of a run.